"I'd never hurt you." That's what she said, her eyes wide, her hand gripping mine, her voice steady, like an oath sworn in a church. The kind of words that are supposed to be bulletproof, the kind of promise that makes you exhale because you want so badly to believe it, and I did. I wanted to. Because loving someone means you're willing to suspend disbelief, to swallow doubt, to build your world on their word even when your gut gnaws at you that something's off. Those 4 words were my foundation, my shield. The phrase I repeated to myself on the nights she came home late, or when her phone lit up with messages she didn't want me to see. She'd never hurt me. And then her sister called him her brother-in-law. It was one of those small moments, the kind you almost miss if you're not paying attention. We were at a barbecue, her whole family gathered, kids running through sprinklers, the grill smoking, bottles clinking in coolers. He was there, of course. He always was. I'd grown used to it. He had become part of the furniture, slipping in and out of our lives under the guise of being a friend, a colleague, a neighbor, depending on who asked. I kept telling myself not to read into it, not to let jealousy eat me alive. She'd never hurt me. Her sister walked over, laughing, handing him a plate of food, and said it without thinking, without realizing, she'd dropped a bomb in the middle of a sunny afternoon. "Here you go, brother-in-law." Just like that. Natural, casual, a slip of the tongue that froze the air in my lungs. He laughed, awkward, but not surprised. She flushed, glanced at me, then at her sister, muttered something about, "Oh, I didn't mean it like that," and hurried away. But the damage was done. In that second, the curtain ripped. Because you don't call someone that by mistake. That word, brother-in-law, doesn't slip unless, somewhere, somehow the idea of them together has been spoken, entertained, maybe even accepted, behind closed doors. I smiled through it, kept flipping burgers, handed out plates, but inside my chest, something broke. The words "I'd never hurt you" echoed in my head, mocking, hollow. That night, I lay beside her in bed, watching her breathe, and all I could see was her sister's face, when she realized what she'd said. That flicker of panic, that silent, "Oh God." I said it out loud. I didn't ask her about it, not yet, because I knew what would happen. She'd deny, she'd twist, she'd remind me of her promise, of those 4 words, and I'd be the paranoid husband, the insecure one. I wasn't ready to be cast as the fool again. So I stayed silent, and in that silence, I started watching. I noticed the way her phone never left her side anymore, how even in the shower it sat on the counter, screen face down. I noticed the little inside jokes she shared with him, jokes I wasn't part of, the kind that come from whispered conversations and shared secrets. I noticed how, when his name popped up on her phone, her lips twitched into a smile she didn't even know she was making. And yet, every time the doubt clawed at me, I heard her voice again. "I'd never hurt you." A spell I didn't want to break, even when it was killing me. Weeks passed, and her sister's slip became the lens through which I saw everything. Every touch, every laugh, every absence. I began piecing it together, not like a jealous man grasping at shadows, but like a detective following a trail. The receipts in her purse that didn't match the errands she claimed, the perfume she wore on days she said she was just running to the store, the way she came home with a glow in her cheeks, the same glow I used to believe I was the one giving her. The moment it crystallized for me was a Saturday morning. She was in the kitchen, making coffee, her phone buzzing on the counter. She reached for it instinctively, then froze when she saw me watching. "It's just work," she said quickly, forcing a smile, but her eyes betrayed her, darting away too fast. Later, when she went upstairs, I glanced at the screen. Just one word, his name. That was when I knew her sister hadn't made a mistake. She had spoken a truth that slipped past the gate. A truth everyone else might have been in on. A truth they thought I was too blind or too trusting to see. I started gathering quietly, deliberately. I didn't confront her, not yet. I collected evidence the way a man collects air before a long dive. Phone records, bank statements, patterns of her absences. Little things that on their own could be dismissed. But together they painted a mural of betrayal. And still at night when she laid her head on my chest and whispered those words, "I'd never hurt you," I held her, my hand on her back, my eyes open in the dark. Because love makes you do strange things. It makes you hold on to the lie even after you've seen the truth. The breaking point came at another family gathering. A birthday this time. She was laughing, wine in hand, and he was there, hovering near her like a shadow. Her sister caught my eye across the room, her face pale, guilty. It was as if she knew I had figured it out, as if the weight of her slip months earlier was pressing down on her too. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just my secret anymore. This was theirs. A family affair, a silent pact, a web spun around me, while I sat at the center, blind. That night, when we came home, I sat in my study. After she went to bed, I pulled out the folder where I'd been collecting everything. The records, the receipts, the notes I'd made, and on top I placed a piece of paper with her sister's words written in my handwriting. Brother-in-law, because that's what betrayal is. It's never just the act itself. It's the words, the slips, the tiny cracks where the truth leaks out, despite their best efforts to contain it. And I decided then, I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to wait for the perfect moment. The moment when her words, "I'd never hurt you," would collapse under the weight of her sister's slip, her actions, and my evidence. That's where part 2 begins. Not with suspicion, not with paranoia, but with a plan to end the lie, not in shadows, but in daylight, where everyone she fooled would see her for what she really was. I remember sitting in that study, the folder spread open in front of me, the word brother-in-law staring back at me in my own handwriting. It felt surreal, like my life had become someone else's story, a play I was trapped inside with no idea how I got cast in this role. I kept running her words through my hue. I'd never hurt you. 4 words I used to cling to, now nothing more than smoke dissolving in front of me, because the proof was all there, not in one big revelation, but in the trail of small things, each one stacking on the last, until it crushed me under its weight. For weeks after that, I lived a double life. To her I was still the same husband, steady, dependable, her safe place, but inside I was steel, cold and sharp, carrying the truth in my chest like a blade. I smiled when she laughed. I kissed her when she leaned in. I told her I love you back when she whispered it at night. And all the while I thought of her sister's voice, casual and unguarded, calling him something he should never have been. My replacement, my stand-in, her brother-in-law. She must have thought she was untouchable, but I'd never suspect that her words, her promises, her careful routine would keep me blind. And maybe they would have, if not for that slip. But once the curtain tears, you can't unsee the stagehands. You can't unknow that the show is fake. And every day that passed, I got better at playing my own role. Not the blind husband anymore. The hunter waiting for the prey to walk straight into the trap. The trap came in the form of her family's annual holiday dinner. It was tradition, her parents hosting, siblings gathering, cousins filling every seat around the long table. A night of speeches, toasts, laughter, a night where appearances mattered, where she would shine in front of the people who thought we were unbreakable, and I knew that's where it had to happen. In the days leading up, I prepared, not with yelling, not with rehearsed accusations, with precision. I copied the records, printed the emails, highlighted the payments. I placed them in a neat stack, clipped together like a report, and on the very top, I taped a note with her sister's words in bold letters, brother-in-law. I wanted her to see, to know that the very people she thought she could hide behind were the ones who betrayed her, without even meaning to. The night of the dinner, she dressed beautifully. She stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her earrings, smiling at me with that same practiced warmth. "You okay?" she asked. "You've been quiet today." I smiled back, steady, calm, "Just tired. But I'll be fine." She kissed me, soft, sweet, the kind of kiss that used to make me feel whole. And all I could think was how many of those kisses were stolen from me, how many belonged to him instead. At the table the air buzzed with chatter. Plates clinked, glasses refilled, laughter rose in waves. She was radiant, leaning into me, laughing at her brother's jokes, passing food down the line. And then, as if the universe itself wanted to twist the knife, her sister made another slip. She was pouring wine for him, smiling, and said with a laugh, "Well, you practically are family now, aren't you?" Silence fell for a second too long. She caught it instantly, her eyes snapping to me, wide, panicked, But I didn't flinch. I didn't let a flicker cross my face. I just lifted my glass and said, "Speaking of family, I think it's the perfect time for a toast." The chatter died down. Everyone turned toward me, expecting some heartfelt words. She smiled nervously, her hand tightening on mine under the table. I stood, glass raised. "I want to talk about promises," I began. "About the things we tell the people we love. Like, I'd never hurt you." Simple words, right? Strong words. Words you build a life around. Her face drained of color. "And then," I continued, my voice calm, steady. "Sometimes the truth comes out in small ways. A receipt, an email, or maybe just a slip of the tongue." I looked at her sister then, not with anger, but with acknowledgement. She froze, her cheeks flushing. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the stack of papers. The room fell into a hush. All eyes on me. I laid the papers on the table in front of her, and tapped the note on top. "Like calling him your brother-in-law." Gasps rippled around the table. Her mother covered her mouth. Her father's jaw tightened. He leaned forward, scanning the papers, and the silence turned heavy. She scrambled, her voice high, desperate. "Please, it's not. He's just a friend. He's just—" I cut her off with a single word. And my voice was quiet, but it silenced her like a shout. "No more lies. Not tonight. Not in front of everyone you've fooled." She tried again, tears streaming now, her hands clutching mine. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't want to hurt you." I pulled my hand away. "But you did, and you lied about it. And worst of all, you made everyone else part of your lie." I looked around the table, at the wide eyes of her family, at him sitting stiff in his chair, his face pale. "You wanted to play house with him, while using me as your alibi. Well, the meg's over." The silence that followed was suffocating. She sobbed openly, her shoulders shaking, mascara smudging. He shifted in his chair, looking like he wanted to vanish into the floor. Her parents stared, horrified, torn between disbelief and fury. I gathered the papers, slid them back into the envelope, and stood. "I'm done," I said simply. Done with the lies, done with the promises that meant nothing, done being the fool at the table, and I walked out. The air outside was freezing, but it felt cleaner than anything I'd breathed in months. Behind me, voices rose, hers pleading, her family's angry, his low and panicked. But I didn't turn back. I got into my car, closed the door, and for the first time in years, I felt like I had control of my own story again. The aftermath was chaos, calls, texts, voicemails that shifted from anger to desperation. It was a mistake. It wasn't serious. You're blowing this out of proportion. But none of it mattered. Once you've heard her sister call him your brother-in-law, you can't unhear it. Once you've seen the papers, the emails, the proof, you can't go back to ignorance. I met with a lawyer the next day, handed me evidence, the trail I'd collected. He read through it quietly, then looked up and said, "You'll be fine." She won't be. And for the first time I believed that. She begged me to meet, to talk, to forgive. But forgiveness is impossible when every kiss, every promise, every late-night whisper is poisoned by betrayal. She said again, through tears, "I'd never hurt you," and I just shook my head. "But you did, and you can't take it back." Her sister never looked me in the eye again. Maybe guilt silenced her, maybe shame, but I didn't blame her. She hadn't meant to betray her sister. She just told the truth by accident, and the truth is what saved me, because the truth always slips through, no matter how carefully it's buried, and that's what I hold on to now. Not the betrayal, not the pain, but the knowledge that I survived it, that I walked through fire and came out the other side, scarred but stronger. She said, "I'd never hurt you," but in the end, those were just words. It was her sister, with one accidental slip, who told me the truth.